So today I want to talk about how people-pleasing is affecting your fertility. And for those of you who are new to me or my podcast, to give you a little bit of a background, first, I'm an acupuncturist and Chinese medicine practitioner that specializes in fertility and hormone health. That aside, chapter 1 of the Suen, which is one of the major Chinese medicine classical texts from thousands of years ago, chapter 1 says all illness, all disease starts in our mind. And I am a big proponent of that, especially in my practice. I believe that our thoughts and our beliefs create our emotions, create our reality, which affect our physical body. And I believe that the way Chinese medicine looks at our thoughts and our beliefs and our patterns and how that affects our body is a big part of the reason that I have almost 100% success rate when it comes to treating women with infertility in my practice. So let's dive in. For those of you, if you're not sure if you're a people pleaser or not, maybe you've heard the term, but you're like, I don't know if that's me, maybe that's me. Or some of you, I'm sure, is like, yep, that's definitely me, but how do I fix it? Well, we're going to answer the how to fix it at the end, but let's talk about what a people pleaser is, right? So some traits that might show up that'll point to the fact that you're a people pleaser. So if you have trouble saying no to people, that is a sure sign that you are a people pleaser, right? You are trying to make everyone else happy besides yourself. If you are constantly seeking approval or validation from other people, that is also a sign that you're a people pleaser. You can't find your own inner worth. You can't be proud of yourself. You need someone else to validate or tell you that, which can also show up as like a chronic educator, right? Always going back to school, getting more degrees, learning more. It's like you need that validation that you have wisdom and knowledge. If you are someone who has fear of conflict, this is a sign that you are a people pleaser, right? You don't want to start a fight. You'd rather be passive aggressive or just be passive than speak your mind and speak your truth and maybe start a conflict. Over apologizing is a sign of a people pleaser because again, you don't feel your own worth. You always have to say you're sorry. You always have to put that emotion on someone else. Now, if you have trouble taking a compliment, this is actually also a sign that you're a people pleaser, and it might not be as obvious, but this is going to go back to the core beliefs of people pleaser, which we'll get to later in this episode. But if you have trouble taking a compliment, it's because you have trouble putting the attention on yourself, right? You have trouble feeling good about yourself, and you always want to make other people happy, and you don't want the attention necessarily to be on you. Another big one is feeling responsible for other people's emotions. It's not your job to keep other people happy. It's not your job to make sure someone's not angry or sad or frustrated or upset, but often, especially as women, we do take on this responsibility, and that is a form of people pleasing. Another big one I see in my practice is trouble setting boundaries. So this can show up in many ways. It can show up in your work life. It can show up in your family life, but trouble setting boundaries with those around you with things that feel good to you because you're afraid of how your boundaries will affect someone else, right? You're always trying to please someone else. And lastly, having trouble asking for help, which again goes back to like your self-worth and feeling like everyone else's time and energy is more valuable, right? You don't want to ask for help because that might make someone else upset, or it might stretch their limits, or it might put more responsibility on them. And you're always constantly thinking about the other person. And while there are aspects of people pleasing, which is really nice and kind, right? You're probably a really generous person, which is a beautiful thing. There still needs to be limits to it so that you're protecting your own energy and your own health. So before we dive into how people pleasing is affecting your fertility, let's talk about the simple basics of fertility. So when it comes to getting pregnant, right, you are literally growing another human in your body. You are carrying, supporting, and growing a whole nother life in your body. In order to do this, it takes a lot of nourishment. It takes a lot of resources. In Chinese medicine, we call these resources blood, which is actual physical blood in your body, qi, which is energy, yin, which is thick fluids in your body, and it's also hormones. So anything you can weigh in your body is yin. So blood is yin, thin fluid is yin, and thick fluids such as hormones are a yin substance. And you also need yang energy, which is, energy. It's that heat in the second half of your cycle that helps keep your temperatures up in that second half of the cycle. So those are all the resources that your body needs in order to get pregnant and to maintain a healthy pregnancy and ultimately grow another human. But my whole point is that your body needs a lot of resources. It needs a lot of energy. It needs rest and it needs to be fed the right resources. Our bodies can be loosely related to a car, right? A car is not going to run if you don't give it gas, if it doesn't have electricity to turn on. The same with our bodies. We can't get pregnant and carry another human if we don't have that resources, right? If we don't have that fuel and that gas. So there's multiple ways that people pleasing can affect your fertility. But the first one is really simple. It's inadequate self-care. And when I'm talking about self-care, I'm not talking about, getting your nails done or going for a massage or getting a facial. I'm talking about spending time for yourself and doing things for yourself that you truly love and enjoy. And self-care could be simply sitting at home and reading a book or watching TV, right? It's taking care of yourself and your energy. It's doing what feels good to you. If you are constantly trying to make other people happy, you're often overdoing it, meaning you're doing more than you should and you're using up too many resources and you're not taking the time to nourish and rebuild more resources, right? To build and nourish our body, to build those resources that we need to support a whole nother life in our body. It takes a lot of energy. And in order to do that, we need adequate amounts of rest, right? We need that downtime. And if you're that person who can't say no to a work dinner or dinner with your friends when you're exhausted and all you want to do is lay on the couch, then you are burning out your resources. And this also means that you're probably not taking the time for things like, healing modalities that could really support you, or internal examination and reflection, right? Taking time to meditate, to just sit in silence, to be with yourself. Ryan Holiday has a saying. He's a great author. You should definitely check out his books. But he has a saying that when you say yes to one thing, you're saying no to something else. And frequently for people pleasers, when you were saying yes to someone else, you were saying no to yourself. You're saying no to taking care of yourself. And again, how this goes back to fertility is you're saying no to building resources in your body. You're saying no to nourishing yourself and supporting those aspects of your body, your mind, your body, and your soul that are going to be supportive to you. Another big way that people pleasing affects your fertility is simply increased stress. People pleasing often involves putting other people's needs and expectations ahead of your own, which can ultimately lead to chronic stress. Just think about it. If you're constantly doing things for other people, right? You're constantly putting other people's needs ahead of your own. It gets overwhelming. I mean, I can say this as a mother who has to put other people's needs ahead of their own. I think most mothers can relate to that in some sense, right? There's people that you have to take care of. Anyways, when you are constantly putting other people's needs ahead of your own, it feels overwhelming. It feels constriction. You start to get angry and frustrated, right? And that leads to stress. Chronic stress activates the fight, flight, or freeze response in our body. And what this response does is it releases stress hormones such as cortisol and adrenaline. Now, definitely check out my podcast episode number 18, where I talk about how stress affects our hormones and affects our fertilities if you want to learn more about this. But simply put, all of our hormones, our stress hormones and our sex hormones come from the same bucket, from the same resources, the same energy. So if you are constantly depleting your energy using those stress hormones, such as cortisol and adrenaline, which could be releasing and running in the background if you are in a state of chronic stress, you're depleting your sex hormones such as estrogen and progesterone, which can throw off your cycle, cause irregular cycles, can cause you not to ovulate, can cause spotting, and all those things are going to affect your fertility. But again, for a deeper understanding about how stress affects your fertility, definitely check out my podcast number 18 and talk all about it. So from a Chinese medicine perspective, the way people pleasing can affect your fertility really comes down to building resources in your body. And when you are a constant people pleaser, the root cause of that, which I'll jump into in a second, but the root cause of that causes your body not to build enough blood. It blocks your body from actually taking that food that you're eating and those nutrients and using it to build blood in your body. And if you don't have enough blood in your body to support a healthy pregnancy and menstrual cycle, it's going to be near impossible to get pregnant. And when I talk about needing more blood in your body, it doesn't mean that you have anemia or iron deficiency or B12 deficiency. It doesn't mean it's necessarily something that's going to show up on a lab test, but it does mean that you don't have enough blood in your body to support your menstrual cycle, the functioning of your organs, the functioning of your brain, and everything else, right? So in a healthy manner, right? You have enough blood to survive, but is everything working the way it should be? And blood is a big part of pregnancy, not just because blood is a big controller of our menstrual cycle, but because in order to maintain a pregnancy, your body needs to double in blood volume. And in order to do that, it needs the resources, right? Like blood doesn't just pop out of thin air when we get pregnant. Our body needs that blood in storage to use in order to support and maintain the pregnancy. So let's talk about the root cause of people pleasing. There might be a lot of reasons you tend towards people pleasing, but the root cause always comes down to a feeling of unworthiness, a feeling of not feeling good about yourself, not feeling worthy. It's a sense of low self-esteem. It can also come from this need to belong and not feeling worthy enough to belong, in a sense, not feeling worthy enough to put yourself first. And I should say, because I have felt this in my life and I've seen this in other people, you can be a somewhat confident person and still have low self-esteem, right? You can be really confident in certain areas of your life, maybe your career, maybe that's like, where you feel the best and you feel the boldest, but you might feel unworthy and less self-esteem in other aspects of your life. And that really is the underlying core root belief. Now, from a Chinese medicine perspective, when we have that core belief of not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy of taking care of ourselves, not feeling worthy of putting ourselves first, right? Which is why we're always putting other people's emotions first instead of our own emotions. It affects a channel in Chinese medicine called Yin Chao Mai. Now, Yin Chao Mai is one of those channels that sits on our constitutional level of energy. In Chinese medicine, there's 3 levels of energy of qi circulating throughout the body. We have the external level, which is our immune system. We have the internal level, which is our blood and our primary channels and our organs. And then we have the constitutional level of qi, which our Yin Chao Mai, the channel of Yin Chao Mai sits on. And our constitutional level of qi, it really holds our blueprint of life. It holds our experiences. It holds that energy from all of our experiences in our life. It holds our DNA, our genes. It's really like that deep cellular level of energy. And Yin Chao Mai is a channel that connects to our bone structure. And it's all about feeling good about yourself. So when you don't feel good about yourself, a lot of times this will physically show up as posture, right? Hunching over, shoulders going in, having trouble sitting up straight. It could be that your knees go in or your heels go in. It's that body physically turning in, almost trying to hide and protect ourselves because we don't feel good about ourselves and we don't want to feel seen. We don't want to stand tall. But this comes back to fertility because when we don't feel good about ourselves, when we don't feel worthy, we don't feel worthy of producing, of creating things. And when we don't feel worthy of producing, that shows up in our physical body as our physical body not feeling worthy of producing blood, which is a main currency and a main substance in our body. Also, as I mentioned, Yin Chao Mai relates to our bones. In our bones, we hold our Jing. Our Jing can also be related to our bone marrow in a lot of sense, but our Jing is our life essence, right? It's our lifeline. It's our vitality. And our Jing is also what helps create another human. It's what helps us reproduce. Yin Chao Mai works on that really core Jing level with the bone marrow to help produce blood in our body. And when that channel is out of balance, because we feel unworthy, because we feel not good about ourselves or low self-esteem, because we're not able to see the true beauty of who we are, it throws out our body's ability to create blood at that Jing, at that core, at that bone marrow level. So we understand why people-pleasing affects fertility, but let's talk about how to stop doing it. I think in order to stop people-pleasing, it's really important to understand the core reason of why you are people-pleasing in the first place. And a lot of times this comes back to early childhood or some big event in our life, but usually something earlier in our life. And a lot of times it can come from growing up in a situation in a household where you felt like you needed to earn love, right? Where you didn't feel like you had unconditional love. You felt like you had to do good in school or you had to always be helping other people to get love, to receive love, right? Like this will show up a lot if you have narcissistic parents, but your parents don't need to be narcissistic. They could have just been emotionally closed off. Maybe they came from an environment where they never really saw how love was given, so they don't know how to give love, right? It's that feeling that you need to earn love. Also, if you grow up in a situation, an environment where you're constantly being told that you're wrong, right? That will cause you to question yourself, right? Question everything you do, everything you say. And that will ultimately lead back to the sense of low self-confidence, questioning yourself and your own ability and your own beauty. Obviously, events in life, such as being bullied, could lead to an imbalance in yin chao mai and that sense of low self-esteem and unworthiness. But it actually goes deeper than that because, you could be bullied and not be affected by it, right? Our quote unquote traumas in life are how we react to situations. It's not necessarily what happens to us, it's our reaction to it. So if you were bullied and this creates a sense of low self-esteem, that also will go back to this feeling of not feeling worthy, right? You felt unworthy in the first place so that when someone said something mean to you, you took on that energy, right? We always have the option of someone saying something to us and we being like, fuck you, that's not true. But if you felt like you took on that energy, that will create a sense of unworthiness, which again comes back to needing to earn love, not feeling like you have unconditional love and support, which, by the way, is something that everyone should have and everyone deserves as a child and as an adult. And if that wasn't modeled for you, that can create big imbalances in your energy. If you suffer from body image issues or having a really bad relationship with food, that is also a sign that there can be some low self-esteem or not feeling good about yourself, right? Because again, you are focusing all of your quote unquote beauty on the way you look and not your inner knowing, your inner intuition, that inner connection to your own inner beauty. So some practical ways that you can stop people pleasing today. 1, learning to set boundaries. Now, if you are not someone who's used to setting boundaries or was not raised in an environment where boundaries were a thing, I can tell you I was definitely not raised in an environment where boundaries were a thing. It can be really hard to start setting boundaries, especially because your boundaries will affect other people. And if you are a people pleaser, you are constantly thinking about how your actions affect other people. But sometimes we just need to do those things that don't feel good. And setting boundaries that feel good to you is one of the most important things you can do to protect your health and protect your energy. Practice saying no and not feeling guilty about it. And the not feeling guilty about it is the really hard part. But sometimes, again, we just need to leave. We just need to do these things. If you're someone who struggles with this, there's a few books that I love. The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins is one of them. Another book that's great for teaching you to set boundaries and really just kind of explain the whole boundaries thing is Set Boundaries, Find Peace, A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself by Nadra Glover. Really wonderful book also if you are a person who struggles with setting boundaries. But when it comes down to it, setting boundaries really comes back to realizing that you matter, that your energy, thoughts, opinions, and emotions matter, and that you are not responsible for other people's emotions or thoughts or opinions, right? That you want to set a boundary that feels good to you, and it doesn't necessarily matter if it feels good to someone else. And you can do this from a place of love. It doesn't need to be from this mean place. It's a place of loving and respecting yourself. And when you start to do that, people around you will shift also. And one last thing about boundaries is that when you set boundaries, it's really important to be clear about them to yourself and also the person that you're setting them with. And there needs to be clear consequences, right? If my boundary is crossed, then XYZ happens and you really need to stick with it no matter how hard or maybe it feels a little icky at first, but it's really about setting clear boundaries and clear actions that happen if those boundaries are crossed. And second is start to recognize your own needs and maybe do this before the first one, setting boundaries. Maybe I put them in the wrong order, maybe not, let's see. But recognizing your own needs, right? Taking a moment to but tuning in with yourself and realizing what do you need? What feels good to you? If you are a chronic people pleaser, you've probably never done this and it might be hard at first, but before you say yes or no to anything, taking a minute to check in with your body and see what feels good. And this can be done real simply by just taking a moment to sit quietly, maybe with your eyes closed, maybe with one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly, and just take a couple of deep breaths in through your nose, out through your mouth, just to settle your body and to come back to the present moment, really just focusing on the breath. And then just ask yourself, do I want to go to dinner tonight with my friend? And say to yourself, yes, right? And see how that feels to your body. And then say to yourself, no, and see how that feels to your body. Really tune into the energy of listening to your body and what feels good to your body. When you listen, when you learn to the skill of listening to doing only things that feel good to your body, that is like a big game changer for your life and for your health. And it's not easy. It takes practice. It can take a lot of work and energetic, deeper work for a lot of people. But once you learn to do that, it can really be a giant game changer. So start practicing today. When you learn to prioritize yourself, put your goals first, put your emotions first, and your well-being first, you will naturally gravitate towards nourishing your body and building those resources that are needed to maintain a healthy pregnancy, amongst many, many other benefits. And lastly, work on building self-confidence in your decisions. Understanding that doing what is best for you is always the right answer. And to get into that a little deeper, there is never a right answer to anything. There's no right or wrong way. Left and right is never wrong, right? It's what feels good to you is always going to be the right answer. It's cultivating that sense of self-esteem. And this is where Chinese medicine can really change things for you, right? When we work with the energy of the Chinese medicine channels, specifically Yin Chao Mai, but there could be other channels at play in your consciousness and your body as well. When we can dive into that energy of those channels to help rebalance and repair and remove that stuck energy that's holding you back, it can make a world of difference. You can feel like a brand new person in just a few weeks. And by doing that, it can make things like setting boundaries and putting yourself first so much easier. Look, putting other people first is not always a bad thing. It actually makes you a really wonderful human being. It makes you compassionate. It makes you empathetic, but it will also wear you down. It's important to find a balance between taking care of other people and taking care of yourself. When you are taking care of other people, it needs to come from a place of feeling good to yourself, right? Like you have energy to give to take care of other people. If you are taking care of other people from that depleted state and always saying yes from that depleted state, you are only harming yourself. And quite honestly, you're harming other people around you too by showing that that's the way to go, right? That taking care of yourself isn't important. When you start to shift yourself and your energy, people around you will start to shift also to kind of mold to that. It's a really beautiful thing. So anyways, to recap, people-pleasing can strongly affect your fertility by allowing you to burn up resources that your body needs and allowing you not to take the time and energy to rebuild those resources that your body needs to hold and maintain a healthy pregnancy. If you want to stop people-pleasing, you really need to put your self-worth first. Focus on setting boundaries, doing those things that feel good to you, that light you up, that make you happy, and ditching the rest. Now, I know when I say that, like we all have things we have to do, but it's learning to do those things we have to do from a place of love and enjoyment. That's another key to this. But lastly, and most importantly, changing that energy, that structural energy on a core DNA constitutional level of energy can be insanely supportive for help turning those people-pleasing habits into self-care and loving and self-esteem and taking care of yourself, really loving yourself. So anyways, if you want to learn more about Chinese medicine and how Chinese medicine can support you in your people-pleasing habits, in your fertility, in your reproductive health journey, as always, please reach out. You can find me on Instagram, on TikTok. You can reach me in my DMs. You can email me. Always feel free to reach out and ask questions. I love chatting. So thank you again.